This is Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. On this episode, we'll be speaking with Senator Carol Liu. We will also be joined by the mayor of Pasadena. His name is Bill Bogaard. And then the city manager of Glendale, Scott Ochoa, all in your district, of course.
Oh, of course.
You have a wonderful district along the foothills.
Along the foothills, yes. But the biggest cities are Pasadena, Glendale, Burbank.
Which are booming. They are doing so well.
They're doing very well. And we could always do better.
Of course, of course.
But, and then my district, the number has changed from 21 to 25. And I go along the foothills of the 210 freeway all the way out to Upland.
So it's a nice district. It's a
very nice,
bit more diverse, I guess you could say, in terms of political persuasions.
Yes,
is that fair?
That's very fair.
But you won quite a victory, I believe, almost 60% of the vote, or you did break 60?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
Yeah,
right.
It was a nice victory for you. Speaking of victories, I want to talk about victories generally for the Democratic Party. I think it's fair to say that in California, it was quite a night.
Quite a night.
Not only did the Democrats win every competitive race, they won non-competitive races.
Right.
I mean, even the assembly went 2/3 majority.
Right.
No one expected that. What happened? Why did it go so well for the Dems?
I don't know why, but we have really concentrated on getting our message out and convincing voters that we need to solve these problems together. And the opposition party has been really a party of no, and not offering us solutions. And so I think the public got it.
Right, that message resonated. There is no doubt about it. In fact, I saw a poll recently that talked about what are your views of the Republican Party, and the party of no was right up there in terms of public perception. So speaking of a 2/3 majority, as you know surely, under Proposition 13 passed in 1978, in order for a local government to pass a specific tax, the voters need to pass it by 2/3.
Correct.
That has been challenging. We know recently in Los Angeles County, there was a measure to extend a sales tax for transportation projects.
Right.
It got 66.12%.
Yes.
Just failed. You're looking to possibly change that formula. Tell us about SCA 4.
SCA 4 would make that threshold, instead of 66 2/3, 55%.
Okay.
Okay, and it would give the locals an opportunity to really, local voters, an opportunity to really consider whether or not they want to support a transportation project.
And what's interesting is, in order to get SCA 4 to the voters, it needs to get out of the Assembly and the Senate by how much?
2/3.
But then the voters need to pass it by
a majority vote.
50%, so that they can then pass a transportation tax by
55%.
It's crazy, all the percentages.
Right.
But there's no doubt that there is a general sense that maybe we need to look at Prop 13. Some are very nervous about it. Some are ready to move forward. As I understand it, there are proposals. Yours, for example, deals with transportation. I think Senator Leno's looking at a parcel tax, focusing on education. Although we already have dropped the threshold to 55% for, is it education bonding?
Bonding.
Well, let me ask you more generally then about Prop 13. Do you think it's time to really look at this third rail of politics, some would call?
It is a third rail of politics, and I think we're doing it incrementally. We're doing it very specifically, and the governor has already put us on this pathway to allowing local governments assume more responsibility for services. And realignment, correct. And so if you're going to do that, then you have to give them resources, and if they, because everybody's been cut to the bone.
Sure.
And in order to have that happen, these are tools. These are tools that go out and ask the voter whether or not you like the direction, and on a very local level, like the direction of where the body politic wants to go.
Well, we know that last year redevelopment was eliminated, and that was a tool that was used by local government. And the governor, in advocating in favor of its elimination, did talk about lowering the threshold for that issue. Is that in discussion now in Sacramento?
Well, it's been pretty quiet, but I think there are folks behind the scenes, because we took that tool away from cities, and
Right.
and we know that affordable housing
Right.
and clearing up blight is a problem for cities if they don't have resources to do this. And there have been lots of folks in Sacramento who have introduced bills, but we know the governor is not there yet to sign them.
On the redevelopment
On the
side.
redevelopment side. So we need to continue the conversation. And
Although it's interesting when you say the governor is not there on the redevelopment side, well, a 2/3 majority can override a gubernatorial veto.
yes.
Now, the governor is a Democrat, as is the supermajority party.
Right.
I presume early on in the cycle, we want to make nice with our Democratic governor, but is that something that the supermajority party in the legislature needs to look at?
Well, I don't know. We have not talked about it.
Which is very fair. Let's talk even further about Prop 13. I think it's fair to say that the body politic supports Prop 13, especially as it relates to residential properties. Because as we remember in the 70s, the 60s, property taxes were spiking too quickly and it was becoming very difficult.
Right.
But for commercial properties, there's a discussion there. Split roll.
Split roll. There is a discussion there. I think someone is going to propose something to be considered, and we'll see what the language is like. The unfortunate part is businesses don't turn over that often.
Right.
If you're in business, so what do you gain out of this?
Right. At least when homes do shift more frequently, but families or entities can own businesses, own commercial property for generations.
Right.
Literally.
And so there may not be enough to gain out of this, but let's just see what the language looks like.
What about really looking at our taxing structure?
Oh, I'd love that.
Yes, I'm sure, because there is no doubt that we rely too heavily on high-income wage earners
Right.
and on capital gains.
Yes.
And what happens when the Facebook IPO doesn't go very well? The state all of a sudden has a $2 billion hole.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Right.
So is there, and I would think that'd be something that maybe could be a bit bipartisan. Even though you don't need the Republicans, but it could be more bipartisan.
It could be. I mean, I do think we need to have a serious conversation because it's not sustainable what goes on today. You can't depend upon a very small minority of folks to carry the programs that more people are using. So, and it's a very sticky,
no doubt about it.
Sticky question here. And the previous governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, had a commission that looked at tax reform and how, and they came back with a group of recommendations, one of which is taxing services, doctors, lawyers, et cetera.
Well, what about that? Decrease the sales tax overall, but spread out the categories.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think these are very honest things on the table that ought to be looked at. And we don't know what long-term consequences are about, but we should talk to some economists, some folks that do this for a living, and come back with some more recommendations, something that could be palatable to people.
I must ask you about Prop 30, which passed with over 55% of the vote, increases sales tax by a quarter cent for 4 years, and taxes on high-income wage earners for 7. I got to be honest. I thought it was going down to defeat in a big way, but it passed in a big way.
Yes.
What happened?
Jerry
Brown, the governor.
Jerry Brown. He really he went out.
He fought.
He fought for this and convinced people that this was the right thing to do. And I think more importantly, we had a little bump on online registration.
A little bit.
A lot
of bits. Some could argue.
And I think, and most of those were kids.
Right, under 35.
Right, young people.
And they were registering Democratic.
Yes, they were. And and he went out. His campaigns were at the universities, at the schools. And he convinced them to get out and vote for Prop 30.
And that drove up voter turnout overall.
It really did.
The Obama numbers increased. The Democrats did very well in the legislature. Carol, I want to thank you so much for joining us. She is a member of the California State Senate. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Bill Bogaard. He is the mayor of Pasadena, and we'll be discussing the possible placement of an NFL team in the Rose Bowl, at least temporarily. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Bill Bogaard. He is the mayor of Pasadena. And sir, while much of the region has been focused on Farmers Field and a stadium in downtown Los Angeles for NFL football, before that could ever happen, any NFL team would need to live somewhere temporarily. And that somewhere could be the Rose Bowl in Pasadena.
That's true.
Why don't you talk to us about the possibilities with regard to the Rose Bowl, and then we'll talk about the controversy.
The Rose Bowl is not the only possibility. I'm certain there are others, including the Coliseum.
Right.
But the Rose Bowl is a great stadium that would accommodate an NFL team on a temporary basis very well. We're in the midst of a renovation program that will put it into excellent shape.
And currently, UCLA plays there 12 games a year, or 7 games a year, I believe it is.
7 games a year.
And under current land use regulations, there can be up to 12 events.
That's true.
At the Rose Bowl. And that's where the rub comes in. Because if an NFL team were to come to Pasadena temporarily, because the voters already said no to a permanent team in Pasadena, the land use regulations would need to change.
That's true, and we've taken most of the action needed to increase the number of allowable events from 12 to 25. In the event, we don't know for certain, that there are conversations in the future with an NFL team.
But let's talk about that, because it has caused a lot of pain and anguish throughout the city. We know there was a city council vote, a 7-1 vote. You were part of the 7, I believe. And that vote wasn't to approve an NFL team coming temporarily.
That's true.
It was to move forward with the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But that caused a lot of people to be up in arms.
Well, it's true, and the council member from the area where the Rose Bowl is located is under attack from a group of his constituents for having supported the notion that maybe the NFL might come.
And let's talk about that. That council member is Steve Madison. He's rumored to be a potential successor to Bill Bogaard, because I understand you will not be running for re-election in 2015. But Mr. Madison, who has opposed a permanent stadium or a permanent home for the NFL at the Rose Bowl, did vote in favor of this moving forward, and yet there are recall papers circulating.
Well, that's what I understand, and that reflects the strong reaction on the part of some. It's not an easy thing to qualify a recall. Right. I don't remember in recent modern times that any recall has succeeded
in Pasadena.
But in any event, there are strong feelings, and I respect those feelings, because I realize that when those major events occur at the Rose Bowl, it is burdensome.
At the same time, and I'm just playing the opposite side, when was the Rose Bowl built?
90 years ago.
Yeah, so it's not as if people didn't know that when they moved into what is a beautiful area. It's Arroyo Seco, is that what it's called?
Well, it's the Arroyo Seco, the Linda Vista neighborhood, the East Arroyo neighborhood.
I mean, just beautiful that 12 days a year, maybe a few more, people could be driving through.
Yes.
And there are 365 days a year.
Yes.
So while it is disruptive, there are benefits to having the Rose Bowl. I mean, the economic benefits for the region, specifically Pasadena, are quite dramatic, I presume.
Well, they certainly are. For one thing, the lease payments themselves would be extremely helpful, either to help with the renovation that is underway.
And that is what I want to talk about as well, is the renovation.
Okay.
Because we know that the renovation is quite important. It needs to be done. The cost is approaching $200 million. But like you said, if the lease is made with the NFL and the Rose Bowl, it could bring in an additional, $5 million a year, $10 million a year?
$5 to $10 million a year is the estimate with which we are working in regard to what might be possible.
And so how pivotal would that be for this project? Because look, you can say a lot of things about the Rose Bowl, but it is iconic. It is legendary. I mean, not only for UCLA, but there is a small game that's played every January 1st or so that is probably, I mean, I remember as a kid, I didn't really know the difference between the Rose Bowl and the Super Bowl, because they were both the two major sporting events of the year.
That's true. No, I would say the Rose Bowl would welcome the opportunity to have those games on a short-term basis. The funding would be valuable. As far as the renovation is concerned, if we have more funding from the NFL relationship during the 2 or 3 years that they might be there than we need for the renovation, we're going to set that into an endowment and assure that the Rose Bowl is on a strong financial footing for the time going into the future.
But in the final analysis, we need an NFL team. We still don't have one. And I'm wondering if Pasadena, because you are a potential home temporarily for the NFL, is involved in these conversations, or is it really the bailiwick of Los Angeles, Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, his successor? Because look, I mean, how could maybe I'm partisan on this, but how could LA not have a football team? I mean, come on, it's enough already. It's been almost 20 years.
It's been almost 20 years since Los Angeles has had a team. You know that there's another city near Los Angeles that's considering
City of Industry,
and both of those developers have proposals, so to speak, to pursue. But
is Pasadena involved in this? I mean, you know, maybe you can't tell me too much because it's private negotiations, or maybe you can. I don't know the answer. But it would seem as if, again, maybe I'm being a partisan on this issue, but it could. Look, there are actually debates about whether a new team would bring revenue or just displace revenue. But be that as it may, you know, it seems as if this could be a real boon for the region.
Well, it would certainly add to the rich variety of athletic events and other entertainment that's available in Southern California. Some would say we don't need an NFL team. We have so much, and with television coverage, it's available. But Pasadena is, I think, a smaller question on the big picture of whether an NFL team will come to Southern California. The first question is, will an NFL team come? That's the big question. And then the subsidiary question is, where is that team going to play for a couple of years while a new stadium is constructed?
So how deep into negotiations is Pasadena with regard to the Rose Bowl vis-a-vis the Coliseum, or is it just incredibly premature?
It's premature. I have no information or signals that the NFL is close. An NFL team coming to Los Angeles is close. It could be a year. It could be 2 years before that question about an NFL team coming that you say is clearly an important question for Southern California is raised and resolved.
So where do we stand on the Pasadena question? Because as I mentioned, the vote was simply to move forward, continue looking into this. What's the timeline?
We've done virtually all the work we need to create an ordinance that allows more than 12 events. And in that regard, nothing further is needed on the part of the city until such time as someone taps the city manager on the shoulder and says, you know, an NFL team is pretty close to agreeing to come to Southern California. We'd like to talk about where that team might play for a couple of years. So
at that point, you start jockeying against the Coliseum?
Possibly. It depends on the availability of the Coliseum. The Coliseum, you know, is undergoing a transfer of control from a
they had some issues there
to USC.
They had some problems there, I think. I vaguely remember that. Yes, continue.
And
aren't there indictments?
USC may be interested or may not be interested in having that. Certainly, I think everyone agrees the Coliseum needs the kind of renovation that the Rose Bowl has started.
Have you already started the renovations?
Yes. We've had 2 annual installments, so to speak, and as soon as the game is over in January of this year, of next year, January 1 of 2013, construction will continue on the renovation at the Rose Bowl to completion before the end of the year.
His name is Bill Bogaard. He is the mayor of the beautiful city of Pasadena. My name is Brad Pomerance. When we come back, we'll be speaking with the city manager of Glendale. His name is Scott Ochoa. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Glad you're still with us. Our guest, Scott Ochoa, he is the city manager for the city of Glendale. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be back.
I was telling you that when I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, Glendale, not so much. No, not so much. But now when you drive through Glendale, it is just bustling with activity. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful.
No, it is. We take a lot of pride in that built-out environment, and in that time not too long ago,
right.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
The idea was that this was a bedroom community, and
right.
that's what it historically had been, the bedroom of Los Angeles, and folks really liked that. But in the 1980s, really what you saw in the late 70s and in the 80s was a real vision to remake that city based on the geographic
proximity
advantages that they had.
Yeah, think about it. It's 10, as you say, it's 10 minutes close
to just about everything.
To downtown, to Old Town Pasadena, to Hollywood, to Burbank, to the studios. It's
right.
remarkable. And you talk about being a bedroom community. Now you want the exact opposite. You want to be an 18-hour city.
We want to be an 18-hour city in the downtown, and we want that balance. We want to preserve the quality of life in those traditional single-family neighborhoods, but in that downtown core and in other business districts of the city, we want activity and action from 7 in the morning to 1 in the morning
sure.
to really capture all the different customers and all the different discretionary sales tax dollars, quite frankly, that come through a city.
And I love your new moniker, your new saying. It's one word.
Oh, it's animated.
Animated.
You know, and that's really what we are. When you talk to folks about that historic or more traditional paradigm of Glendale, it was boring in a word. And so when we spent a good deal of time and effort studying what was our brand,
right.
It really came back that this is a place where an entire lifestyle revolves around the many different business types that we have in town, including entertainment.
Right, and I was going to say, many of us may think about the entertainment industry being centralized in Burbank, but isn't DreamWorks in Glendale?
DreamWorks Animations in Glendale.
And there's a couple of other, doesn't Extra Tape in Glendale?
We
Warner
have a
Brothers?
number of tapings,
yes.
Especially in our creative quarter, but the real flagship entertainment company in our town is Disney. We have
right.
Disney Imagineering. We have
not in Burbank, in Glendale.
In Glendale, and when Walt really was looking for a place to place his engineers off campus to really give them some
right.
independence and kind of open to different times of thought, they put him in Glendale, right there by what was an old airport. And I'm telling you now, Brett, we have just delivered the latest 350,000 square foot Class A office building addition to that campus, and they're growing strong.
And it's not only entertainment. You have Whole Foods, LegalZoom, you have the Galleria expansion, Disney Baby. I mean, it just goes on and on
Nestle,
and on.
IHOP, Public Storage, all those corporate headquarters here. Glendale is a place where LA comes to do business, and that's what we want to make sure that people understand.
What about residential? Because when you add more office space, you know, the 134, the 2 can get a little crowded.
Sure.
And so you want people to be able to live near where they work, or you're working to build out communities without impacting traffic too much, but create nice residential environments.
No, you put your finger on it. We think that we can have both. We can have those pristine, beautiful neighborhoods in Ross Moines and in Glenwood and Northwest and Montrose, but we can also be that 18-hour city. And so the key for us, because we're an older city, we're incorporated in 1906, one of the older cities in LA County, is the idea that we work and focus on infill development, taking a look at what hasn't been working for the last generation or so in terms of land use and replacing that with something that does.
Increase density?
Well, we can increase density, but I think even at this point we're looking to moderate that. If we're going to increase density, we're going to do it in the downtown district where we have all the amenities, where we can have folks who are living, working,
right.
entertaining themselves in walking distance.
Enough
to
parking?
Parking is not the issue. For us, it's going to be traffic congestion. But if we can put the density where it makes the most sense, we actually believe that we can get folks out of the cars into transit and alleviate some of that traffic congestion.
No, I know Glendale was a city that used redevelopment, and some would say quite effectively.
Very effectively.
And I also know that redevelopment is gone.
Yes.
It's almost a year now since it's been eliminated, and that has caused a lot of growing pains for city throughout the Los Angeles County area. How is Glendale adjusting without that tool to revitalize areas that may have been challenged in the past?
You know, the beauty of cities is that we adapt very well, and we are problem solvers, right? We don't get locked up in partisan politics because a pothole doesn't have a party affiliation. You know, for us, the idea is to take a look at those business districts and really focus on 3 things that we're looking at. This 18-hour day to keep those discretionary sales tax dollars local, not bled out into our neighboring jurisdictions. Second, to repopulate the office vacancies at the north end of Brand, because if you think about it, whereas Pasadena was the location for tech and Burbank has historically been the location for entertainment, Glendale was a location for finance, insurance, and real estate. Well, what got hit hardest in the recession? So we are remaking ourselves, and as you mentioned, our latest success was bringing the Whole Foods corporate regional headquarters to town, 45,000 square feet. We also have an insurance company that's coming in to relocate their regional headquarters, and the idea is to repopulate that, to keep those jobs there.
What are you doing to lure, for example, Whole Foods? Because before, you could assemble property, you could give certain tax incentives. There were lots of tools you had under the redevelopment box. Now you don't have that.
Well, that brings up the third leg in this effort to do economic development, and that's really to reboot our processes as a business-friendly city. Now, we have a number of innovative tools, land use tools, and right now at this point, because redevelopment is gone, what we are left with are primarily those land use tools. And I'll give you an example. In our downtown, we have a downtown-specific plan.
Is that through your new downtown community benefit district?
The benefit district is an outgrowth of the specific plan. Within that specific plan, we can go to any investor, any developer, any new company that wants to come in and be able to give them the certainty, the clarity of what they need to do and the certainty that they will be able to do it within the boundaries of this downtown specific plan. And as you know, time is money for a lot of these businesses. So if you can go with a broker, a designer, a builder, developer, and ultimately the tenant and say, we can get you through this entitlement process in this amazing location and at time certain, at date certain. And by the way, we also have this community benefit district for the downtown that handles the marketing, the promotions, the outreach. Those are the types of tools that we bring in, and quite frankly, it's the shoe leather at this point. We are out there meeting with our real estate, especially commercial real estate brokers, on a regular basis, because I see their job as our job. They're selling Glendale, we're selling Glendale. When they're successful, we're successful.
Some cities, some municipalities had the benefit of having enterprise zones, which were not eliminated.
Right.
Do you have any enterprise zones?
We don't, and that's unfortunate. The enterprise zone process is highly competitive, sometimes a little more subjective than we would like. We will start to, if it does last, because every year enterprise zones seem to be on the chopping block and just escape by the skin of their teeth. We will probably look at that more for the creative corridor along San Fernando Road, where we actually have, through our entertainment companies, lots of international trade and opportunities to hire folks from the local area.
What's interesting about the redevelopment fight, and an outgoing assembly member said this, Chris Norby, I remember he had said that redevelopment is a Democratic program that benefits rich Republicans. And yet, it was a Democratic governor that eliminated redevelopment. But now that we have a 2/3 majority in the state Senate and the Assembly, and at least some Democrats felt that revitalizing blight was a program they could support theoretically, do you think there's a possibility that some form of redevelopment may come back in this new session, be it affordable housing, just something?
I am personally hopeful that the efforts that you saw by a number of legislators in this session will actually bear fruit in the coming session. As you know, in this session, there were actually bills that were brought forth to give what we would call the redevelopment reboot, the 2.0. I can guarantee you it won't be called community redevelopment. It'll be called something else, but it will have some kind of tax increment financing, which is the essence of redevelopment, that allows cities to combat blight and put in place affordable housing and attract investment. The state at this point really doesn't have a cohesive or coherent even economic development program. They have always relied on the cities to do that. So do I see that happening in the coming year?
Where
Definitely.
does Governor Brown come in?
Well, I think Governor, he seems to be locked into this position of wanting to end it and start new. And I think when you look at what the state thought they were going to get from redevelopment, and in fact what they are getting in terms of money from redevelopment,
not as much.
It's a fraction of that amount. And now they're left in this, they've bought a pig in a poke where they have they've vested themselves in eliminating redevelopment, realizing that there is, one, no economic development program, and two, they aren't getting the money that they thought they were going to get. So we need to find a way out of this. And I think ultimately that leads to collaboration with cities.
Okay, his name is Scott Ochoa. He is the city manager for Glendale. My name is Brad Pomerance. We thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition.